Many states require corporations to have par value, meaning they have to specify this amount. And in this example, it's $1, if you see there. That amount was actually selected by the company. So the idea behind it was originally par value was to help protect the creditors. Back before the Great Depression, there was the stock market crash. Well, what was happening, or what had happened, is a lot of these businesses, these corporations, knew they were going to go under because times were tough. And so they paid these huge dividends to their owners. And as you know, with dividends, your assets are going to go down, and so is shareholders' equity. Well, what would happen then when the company would go bankrupt, the creditors would be there, okay, pay off your liabilities. Well, they'd already given most of the assets to the creditors. To the owners, leaving virtually nothing for the creditors. So the SEC came up with the 1933 and 1934 Acts, and in that they were basically saying, okay, corporations, you have to have this minimum capital maintained or kept in that company. So in other words, if you look at this example, what the SEC law there was saying is that if your total shareholders' equity, this $3.8 million, were to ever fall below the par value, which is the $1 per share times the million shares, then the company would not be able to pay its owners a dividend. So it's to protect the creditors. Well, it's become sort of a farce. A lot of the states don't really use that to protect creditors anymore. So the idea is, since the corporation can pick the amount, the corporations pick very low par values, so that they don't have ever this issue of not being able to pay a dividend to owners because their shareholders' equity became too low. So anyways, remember now, this is an arbitrarily low amount set by the company, so it's not what the stock will typically sell for. In fact, in this example, that is in fact the case. So you can see here, common stock has a balance of $1 million, and again, that's your par value. That dollar amount equals your par value times the number of shares issued, not the number of shares authorized. That was also written on that corporate charter where the company picks what's the maximum number of shares they want to be able to sell. Well, you can't sell, in other words, more than 2 million, but this company has only sold half of what they're allowed to sell. Okay, so that 1 million, that's under shareholders' equity. It's making it go up, so common stock increases shareholders' equity, and it increases it with a credit. So we're going to have a credit to common stock. Now, the amount of cash they received was not just $1 million, and that's where this line item comes from. So in other words, the company didn't sell it for its par value. It sold it for more than the par value. So this price is what they sell it for. The par value is that arbitrarily low amount set by the company, so that it's typical that the company will receive money, capital, in excess of the $1 par in this example. So we have, that's the formula for common stock. We have paid-in capital in excess of par, also going under shareholders' equity, increasing it with a credit. So now if you look here, we have two credits totaling $3 million. Well, what that then represents is the total received. So you can see we've got $3 million of cash or some other asset by issuing common stock. Now I want you to look at how you can get this paid-in capital in excess of par. A lot of times in some of these examples, you'll be told what the cash was that you received, and you might be told what the par value is and the number of shares issued. Well, when you know that, you can actually figure out this. Or in a lot of these homework questions, you'll be given pieces of the information, and you need to know these relationships so you can figure out the missing pieces. All right, so I want you to look at that $3 million and think about how that $3 million can actually be determined because you know that the common stock plus the additional paid-in capital, these two amounts together, is the total that was received. But there's also another way to look at it. If you look at this paid-in capital in excess of par, the price that you got minus the par times the number of shares issued is also what that equals. So I'm going to show you how we can figure out that the price each of those shares sold for was $3 a piece, because we know that this total, and let me show you mathematically, we know that the paid-in capital in excess of par, let me bring that up here, it's a total of $2 million right off this balance sheet. And I would like you to make sure you understand that that is your price that you paid minus the par, the excess, the extra you got over par, times the number of shares issued. But I need to figure out the price. So I can do that because I know that the formula-wise, I can take the 2 million, divide both sides by 1,000,000, and I basically get your price minus 1 equals 2 million divided by 1,000,000 shares. So I know that the $2, price minus $1 equals $2, so I can basically now solve for the price. Now that's a little involved, but sometimes you will need to know that relationship so that you can find the missing amounts on a balance sheet. So again, just to sum up, the cash on the shareholders' equity, is the price times the shares issued. The $3 they got per share. One of the dollars goes in the common stock account. The extra 2 they got goes in the paid-in capital in excess of par. So we now have 2 accounts where we used to just have one when it was a no par value common stock. So it's becoming a little more complicated, and we still have more to go in terms of the equity section of the balance sheet in future videos and slides.